Welcome to this week's video. You're joining me on location once again as I look to photograph a heritage staircase in the heart of Rijeka, Croatia. And the topic of the day is going to be what happens if you walk into a location such as this and you're faced with challenges on site. Challenges that completely ruin a couple of your compositions. Let's do it and let's get photographing. So during our scouting trip, just, nearly 10 days ago now, we actually visited this location. And we're disappointed to learn of this huge winch that's been put in for a flat renovation on the top floor. And of course, to have such a structure placed on the top floor, it needs supporting beams and columns to hold it in place on the lower floor too. Now, I actually took this shot just to show you how in the way it gets. I'm going to put that on the screen now. But this would have been the composition that I wanted, showing some of that skylight, the beautiful window above, the stairs. It's a shame. I'm hoping that when I return later next year, that this has all been removed and we can access the space. However, by that point, there is a possibility of a full renovation. So, to get some nice photographs in this space, avoiding such, construction, what are we going to do?
So of course, there could be two narratives here. The first could be you, the photographer, shooting personal work. You're on holiday, you stumble across a cool staircase, a bit like I have here, and there's construction work going on inside. Well then, unfortunately, there might be no choice for you but to undertake some of this video's later tips. It happens, and sometimes we as photographers have to work around it. However, perhaps you're there to shoot for a construction firm, interior designers, a real estate company, or perhaps for an Airbnb. And firstly, great news, well done for the commission, but you might want to think about 3 or 4 additional things. Firstly, scout the location if possible, to know in advance if you're going to be facing challenges like I am here. Maybe you can incorporate construction elements. If the construction is unavoidable, consider putting it into your narrative, highlighting the ongoing restoration as part of the building story, particularly if the works are to preserve heritage. Another tip, perhaps schedule around construction activity. If possible, coordinate with the construction crew to understand their schedule. Plan your shots during their breaks or in less noisy periods to minimise disruptions to your shoot. Early mornings, late afternoons or weekends might offer quieter times for shooting. But also, when do the works conclude? Perhaps you can return. And if the answer is no to all of this, or you can't return, adapt your shot list. Perhaps be flexible with your planned compositions. Look for alternative angles and perspectives that can still convey the essence of the space while avoiding the construction zone. Use close-ups and medium shots to focus on details and minimise the visibility of scaffolding and any equipment.
So the first thing I'm going to look to do is actually photograph an angle hiding some of these beams that are in our way. Now, because this repeats both this floor and the next floor down, I'm actually going to go 1 floor down to photograph this exact same shot. And that's going to eliminate all this wood from the structure holding up that winch. So yeah, let's get down 1 floor. Okay, so the first tip I've got for you is to scout the location. Look around and make sure that you can spot alternative compositions. There's 5 floors here, so it's pretty tiring to keep going up and down looking around, but I have done just that really, and I've actually gone around and found a couple of alternative angles that could work. The first of which is by these doors, and the problem is this is a public place and it has been pretty busy this morning, and that's given a couple of problems. Number 1, I can be disturbed in this location, and number 2, the lights keep coming on when people enter the building, which not only interrupts the video because they flicker the LEDs, but also when people come through the doors, they could get in my way of the tripod. So I'm going to actually boost my ISO right up to try and capture some shots here to make it a little bit quicker for myself. So ISO 400, let's try and get a shot by the doors.
So what I'm doing here is using strategic framing, which is my main tip. Consider using your framing to exclude or minimize unwanted elements. Position your camera so the walls or doors or pieces of furniture naturally block or obscure the construction zone. For instance, shooting through a doorway or using a tall piece of furniture in the foreground can effectively hide scaffolding or perhaps equipment. Additionally, experiment with different angles and perspectives to find the most visually pleasing composition that still highlights the important elements of the space. Consider shooting from a low or a high angle to avoid capturing construction in the frame. Panning or tilting could be done too, but also remember that in architecture photography we usually try to keep our lines parallel. Be mindful of your framing to ensure the beauty and character of the space is maintained. Simply put, your usual 4th and 5th strength compositions now take on a much greater meaning. Okay, so my composition here had many elements that could actually still go wrong. I'm trying to position myself so that I kind of got the staircase on the left and the right. The problem is with this composition is the pillars, the posts of the whole structure, are in the centre of the frame, which is something I normally look to avoid. The only reason why I've opted for it here is I think that the fact that it's got a hole in the middle, a centre space, kind of still gives the image depth. What do you think?
Okay, so just checking this on the back of the LCD. It's probably not perfect, but I can do a little bit of alteration in post. In terms of other compositions, there is a possibility of some other stuff on this same level, which I'm just looking at now, and potentially we can work with. Now, there is a horrible red fire extinguisher actually on that side, so what I'm going to look to do is hide it behind a post just here. Okay.
Seems like technology.
Sorry, I speak English.
You spot.
Yeah, taking photo. Yeah, beautiful.
What you've just seen there is a pretty typical interaction with residents, people that belong in the space. And that's the key thing here is, although I look a little frustrated here in this scene, is the space belongs to them. They might be apartment owners, they could be renting there, they could be living there, or office workers or staff that actually have more right to be there than you. Don't be that guy. Don't get frustrated and angry. Although it does get a little bit much, I suppose, when you've got construction, builders, and a lot of that was on me. It was actually my choice to shoot on the Monday morning. In hindsight, the Sunday would have been, honestly, a better bet. If you get too frustrated on site, it'll just impact on your photography. You need to remain calm. It's mostly about problem solving, which is what I'm doing here in my next tip. Creative thinking.
Okay, so this composition I actually picked out before. Positioning my tripod actually up here on this windowsill. I don't actually have to be so high. And it's the same as anything with this stuff. It's still, even though you're looking for alternative angles, you've got to still think about your lines and shapes and your perspective, of course. So here, for example, I'm trying to lock my tripod in a good position, be very careful with it. Again, then we're just going to frame up. Now this one's a bit an alternative angle, to be honest with you. I'm getting the top of this arch in here, looking through the view. I'm going to do a pano, top, middle and bottom, and that's going to show the shapes off nicely. Let's try and quickly capture that now. You just got to make sure I'm in the middle. Keep fine tuning it, lock everything down, make sure the camera's nice and straight, and then focus on the top. Let go of the tripod, of course. I just had the 10-second timer on for the cover image, the thumbnail. So obviously got to get that one off. And then we're going to go to the bottom. The middle, sorry, and then the bottom. So there's the middle. And finally the bottom. So looking through my images here, I've rushed it a little bit, to be honest with you, but I'm trying to film and photograph and give you tips and avoid people and the lighting. It's incredibly difficult, so that would be my next tip, is to take your time, pick out those compositions, slow down and try to nail them as best you can. Now, it's not easy to do in such a public venue, as I mentioned, but just be nice to the people, speak to them, and continue on your way. So that just leaves me with the final shot that I want to capture. The thing is today is the builders have actually asked me not to move this stuff again because they're about to approach and pull stuff up to the top floor. However, last time they did allow it. They wouldn't move it, but they allowed me to move this stuff around and put it out of my shot. I captured a couple of images, one towards the door and one towards the staircase, and I'll put them on the screen now and talk you through them.
Leverage AI tools. I hear you shouting at your television and phone screens. And it's true, using AI-powered software, you can enhance and clean up your images, and these tools can help with tasks such as object removal, noise reduction, etc. And AI tools can assist in removing construction elements from some of your shots. However, they are not perfect at all and should only be used where necessary at this point. It's still new technology. The data sets, as spoken about a lot recently with the Adobe fiasco, have not exactly been trained a lot up until this point. I tried using Gen Fill and Object Remove for some shots that didn't make the cut of this video, and both tools struggled big time. The software simply doesn't know what to replace the wooden construction beams with. It hasn't been to this environment. So perhaps we aren't that advanced yet after all, but knowing how to do this stuff in the future is a tool for your kit moving forward.
Okay then, that's all for this week. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a pleasure to have you along with me for the ride once again. If you've got any comments, please do leave them below. And until next time, bye bye for now.